Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, Dr. Adrienne with Healthy Living Chiropractic. I hope everyone's having a great day. It's the last day of school for my kids. I know a lot of kids are finally out, so I hope that everyone is enjoying the beautiful weather and really enjoying themselves. So what we're going to be discussing today are chemicals, things that are called, that are kind of basically all around us all the time. So we're going to be discussing glyphosate. So glyphosate and kind of how it affects our health. Glyphosate is a chemical that is in the products made by Bayer, so Roundup, which is also made by Monsanto. And these are have been used since the 1970s, kind of under the guise that they're actually safe for us and kind of that the side effects were minimal. But recent concerns over the last number of years have come across more worldwide, indicating about and talking about the harmful effects of direct and as well as indirect health effects on our health. So we're going to kind of discuss that more in depth today. We're going to talk about kind of what glyphosate is, what it does to the crops, how prevalent it is in our country, the harms that they're finding in animals and as well in humans, kind of how it affects our health and what types of things that we can do about it as consumers. So first of all, I wanted to share too that if you guys like what it is that we talk about here, if you could like, comment, or share any of this information, we really appreciate any sort of feedback. And like I said, if there's information that you want to share with someone else, please do. We love having our information shared, so we appreciate that. So first of all, what is glyphosate? So glyphosate is a chemical that is basically inhibits certain enzymes in the plants. So it keeps them so they're unable to make certain proteins and therefore they die. And they are targeting towards weeds. Initially, that's kind of how it all started. However, things started killing the actual crops that they wanted to have. So then what they did is they made genetically modified crops or GMO crops. And they kind of are calling them, they're called Roundup ready crops, indicating that they are then genetically modified so that they can withstand Roundup and Roundup doesn't kill them. So in the United States, about 90% of the corn, 90% of the cotton, and 95% of the soybeans that are produced in the United States, a lot of these in the Midwest, are designed to tolerate Roundup. So a lot of them are GMO crops. What that kind of the big thing about this is not only are you getting a genetically modified crop, but you're also now, because these things are GMO and they're kind of Roundup resistance, they are now spraying more and more Roundup on these specific crops. So they're just getting doused with the herbicide and so that they can continue to be fine and kill everything else around it. Basically now they're saying estimates are suggesting that 1 pound of glyphosate is applied for every man, woman, and child in the United States annually. So think about that as a ton of glyphosate, a ton of pesticides and herbicides that are being thrown all over our crops. The stuff is going in the air, the stuff is going in the water, it is going in our water supply, our food supply, it's actually on the crops. So we're eating it, we're breathing it, and we're drinking it. So it's kind of everywhere. Even if you buy non-GMO products, which I highly recommend you do, a lot of things have been shown, a lot of those non-GMO products are showing to have the highest levels of glyphosate in them. And the reason being is glyphosate is actually added after the crop has been picked. So things such as oats, wheat, barley, and certain legumes such as chickpeas and lentils are actually, they're doing what they're calling it, I think it's called a desiccant. Essentially, it's a drying agent to basically, they're spraying Roundup or glyphosate on these products to kind of dry, on these crops, to dry them out so they're easier to store and process for the mills and for the food manufacturing places. So even if you have a non-GMO crop, they're getting doused with glyphosate. So in 2015, the World Health Organization, which I don't like to always quote those guys, but I am in this case, the World Health Organization classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans. So I'm sorry if the WHO is saying something's probably carcinogenic, I'm sure it is, right? Many countries in around the world. So I think 21 countries have either banned or restricted use of glyphosate or Roundup in their products and in their crops and in their countries. The United States continues to use it freely without caution. So just last year, thousands and thousands of lawsuits from people who have either had cancer, died of cancer, estates of people that have passed away from cancer, have sued the company Bayer, who owns Monsanto, which actually makes glyphosate. They've sued them. And so what they did is they settled a lawsuit, or thousands of lawsuits for current and potentially future awards for $10 billion. Get that. So Bayer settled for $10 billion for all these people who have had cancer as a result of these products. Here's the kicker though. Based on the Bayer actually admitted a statement saying, because they're doing the settlement, it contains no admission of liability or wrongdoing. So they're going to spend $10 billion for saying, hey, sorry you got cancer, but we didn't really do anything wrong. I mean, come on, what kind of place is this? Especially when other countries have banned these products and the United States hasn't. It has a lot to do with lobbies. It has a lot to do with big agriculture. I mean, it's a big, huge business. So that being said, all of these things about glyphosate, why is it that it's so negative? What kinds of things can it do for us as humans? A lot of times what it's been doing is creating gluten sensitivity. So oftentimes there's so much more gluten intolerance, myself included, right? And a lot of scientists are actually looking at the fact that no, actually it's not necessarily the gluten that's the problem. It's the Roundup that's sprayed on all of the wheat products in the United States, essentially. So Dr. Stephanie Seneff is a scientist and researcher at MIT, and she has put years and years of research on glyphosate, and she basically just came up with a new book recently. It's called Toxic Legacy. I highly recommend you grab it. I'll be getting it. It's not on my list yet, but my stack of books that I need to read is like this big right now. So Toxic Legacy by Stephanie Seneff. But basically her theory and what she's found with her studies is that because glyphosate is essentially an antibiotic, what it does is it actually kills the bacteria by inhibiting this enzyme like I spoke about in the very beginning. They're not able to create, or they're not able to continue growing, so they die. And so we all have tons of millions of microbes inside our GI system that creates our microbiome. If our microbiome is disrupted because of all this use of glyphosate, it's going to cause digestive issues. Gluten intolerance and sensitivity is just one of them. The incidence of celiac in our country has risen like this with the adaptation of bringing in all of this glyphosate in. So it's a really interesting to take a look at. It can also cause cancer, especially lymphoma. There's been a number of lawsuits, like I mentioned before, for people that have had lymphoma that have been linked back to glyphosate. It's an endocrine disruptor. See, if you guys have been listening to some of our previous talks, a lot of these plastics and other kinds of chemicals are endocrine disruptors. What that means is your endocrine or your sex hormones or your stress hormones as well too, are not able to function properly. It's causing issues with fertility, issues with sterility, problems with your menstrual cycle. All of those things can be disrupted with the use of glyphosate or exposure to glyphosate. It can cause liver and kidney disease. Can also, like I said, disrupt the gut microbiome, causing what's called SIBO, so small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Basically bacteria in places it's not supposed to be. It's definitely something that can happen. They looked at increased causes of ALS, so other neurological type issues. Lou Gehrig's disease is ALS. So it actually can be like a neurotoxin because it does get into the brain through the body, which is a huge, huge issue. It can further the toxicity of vaccines. So what it does is it binds to aluminum. Aluminum is in a number of the vaccines, and the glyphosate is actually in some of the vaccines as well too. But it binds to that, and that gets into the brain, creating a lot of other issues. She's also found that there can be found glyphosate as a link to autism as well. One of the many causes of autism is brain inflammation, essentially. That is kind of what autism is. This stuff gets in the brain, it inflames it. That's kind of what we're looking at. It can disrupt the collagen and can cause weakness to joints and bones. So there has been an increase in Ehlers-Danlos in recent years. That's kind of when the connective tissue is really soft and bendy. People are very hyper flexible. It can cause a lot of other connective tissue type disorders. We're seeing more and more of that now, more joint replacements than ever, more torn ligaments than ever because the collagen and the connective tissue is weaker because it's disrupted by this glyphosate. So those are really important, as really, really kind of negative things to see too. So like I said, for more information, check out the book Toxic Legacy by Dr. Stephanie Seneff. I think at the bottom of this, I will add a link that's got a ton of her information on it too, and a link to the book if you guys are interested in learning more. It's highly educational. There's a lot of tons of information in there. All right, so now that we know that the glyphosate is not good for us, in America, it's basically being showered all over the place. So what is it that we can do about it? Obviously, do not use Roundup in your own lawn. If you have a lawn service, most likely that's the stuff that they're spraying. This time of year, people's sinuses and digestive systems are all ramped up. Everyone's like, oh, I've got spring allergies. No, you've got toxicity to Roundup that you keep breathing in, and your tissues and your sinus cavities are becoming inflamed. That's what a lot of it is. So don't use those things in your own home, in your own garden, in your own lawn. Buy organic and non-GMO foods as much as you can. I understand it's more expensive. I get it, but so is being sick. So if you can do the best you can to get as organic food as possible. But not only just the fruits and vegetables like we've always been taught, but looking at the wheat and things like that as well too, kind of like what we talked about. We want to make sure that we're looking at non-GMO foods as well. And if you're concerned about the toxic load of glyphosate that you may have on your body, talk to me. That's the type of thing that we do in our office. I'm seeing a number of patients that are dealing with toxicities to glyphosate, and it's in their tissues. And we have certain products that we use in our office to help to remove those, actually try to grab onto those chemicals and just excrete them by using binders, some homeopathic remedies, things like that too. So we've got a lot of solutions for you. Would love the opportunity to help. If there's anything that you need, please reach out, put a comment down below, let me know if you want some assistance, and I hope you guys have an awesome day. Take care.